men and women are condemned to live in poverty. Human rights are violated. To come together to ensure that these rights are respected is our solemn duty. It's the lighthouse. It's like a beacon of hope for people in recovery. Obviously they're speaking about the NEIC. So over here, NEIC stands for the North East Inner City. And like they're shining the beacon of hope for leaving a light on. Like they boarded up a house like as big as this, where you could house like 20 people. And yeah, people are sleeping on the streets right here. I mean, follow the message that's written on the boards. Leave a light on for people in recovery and that are homelessness. I just can't wrap my head around it. My daughter referred to this as light, as a tunnel. And I feel what I said back there about speaking up about homelessness, that we can step into the light, and there is light at the end of the tunnel by speaking up. This is Sheriff Street Youth Club. This is a really positive area based on where it's from. Youth Club, it facilitates all sports events from the age of 4 up until the age of 90 or stuff like that. It has soccer, basketball, boxing, and even bingo.
Live in like an area that's kind of, I can't think of the word, but like we're like disadvantaged areas. Like yeah. We're kind of just in the city centre. We don't always have a lot of money. Like so, I'm from Darndale Street flats, and I've like lived in them like since I'm born. Like I was brought home to them flats, and like. They're just great, but people like see them as a bad place, but because we're so used to them, we just like we kind of normalise it, and we kind of like just being there. But some people walk past and think, oh, this is a horrible place to live. Yeah, like I'm very proud to be from Darndale Street. Like I don't know why, but I just am. Like it's just a nice place. A lot of positive things that come out of living in flats. Like to be honest, you don't see like. I'm not even trying to say this in a bad way, but you don't see like people who live in house in estates always staying with them in group of friends. Like we're all friends since we're at least 3 or 4. Like we kind of just stay together. Like I don't know. Like I'm kind of glad that I'm from the inner city because I have great friends. Like they're all from around.
My name is Nicola. I'm a youth worker here in Braddock, and. I suppose how I got involved in this type of work was that I'm from a flat complex myself, over on the south side of the city, and youth work was a very crucial part for my life growing up. I was always in the project, and that led on to kind of prayer leadership, young leader and that, and then I went on a European voluntary service project, that was through the youth service. So I went abroad and volunteered for 1 month in Slovenia, and then I went to Macedonia for a year, and both times I was working in youth centres over there, and then I came back and I went to Newt and got a degree in youth work. So I've worked in a couple of different places, and I'm in Braddock now about 3 years.
I'm Amy. I actually got into youth work in a kind of different way. I'm not from an area of socio-economic deprivation or anything like that, but I was an early school leaver, and through that I ended up going through what was called FOSS. I think it's called Solace now maybe, and I ended up going on to a level 5 in youth studies and community work, and like that I ended up on an EVS, now an ESC, in Moldova, and I kind of really started to figure myself out there, and kind of really started to be like, oh, I knew I wanted to work with people, but definitely young people then in that sense. So I came back then, and like that went on to do the degree in Newt, and absolutely fell in love with it. And I think that there's, you know, lots of different sides to working with people in general. So, but young people, regardless of background or whatever, was kind of I knew where I wanted to go with. So somehow we both ended up here.
Yeah. Recently, like 6 years ago, my flat started doing protests to get a new playground, because there was antisocial behaviour going on in the flats because there was no actual fun that we were really getting, and like basically without the playground we would usually just like be having fights and throwing stones at each other. So like there wasn't really that much positive activity going on like with the kids around the flats. So like for the past like year from like 2015 to 2016, our flats was like doing protests to have the playground, and like we got it like around August 2016, so it was legit like 6 years since we got it. But like even now people have like been wrecking the place up, kind of like they've been breaking like the swings off the bars, and even like broke like stuff off the zip lines too. So even now like and there used to be a sandpit, but that's all like getting like messed up and all because people keep taking it and putting like rats and all in it, and like just like pissing in it, and like that's legit. So like even now even with the playground, it's still like not becoming a positive behaviour, and it's just getting messed up like the old playground as well. I don't really think the guards are like doing that much of a good job with the antisocial behaviour, to be honest. And like even now, like kids these day and age are like going around not being really raised properly, in my opinion, and just like messing like shit up. Like they're not really like doing what they're supposed to be told. So like in my opinion, they're getting too influenced by like romance and gang wars and stuff like that from like the UK, and like they're starting to do that like around here, different areas in Dublin. And a lot of them are kind of going a bit too far now as well, because a lot of these kids like are even like younger than me, like around like 10 to 12 maybe, and going around with hammers and what are they called again? I forgot what they're called, but basically just like toolbars and shit, and like just going after random people like around certain areas and just fighting with them.
And you've seen yourself like with young people that you just interviewed, they're incredible. There's lots of potential there, lots of uncovered potential with young people, and particularly in these areas. It has its challenges, like all jobs. A lot of the time the challenges are beyond the young people that we meet. So it's not the challenge is not with the individual, it's the barriers that surround them. It's the factors that influence their life, it's the environment that they come from. It's, as you well know, it's the policies and everything from the top that trickles down, and how that affects them and how that affects their work. But it's an absolute privilege to work with these young people and work in these communities. So that's how I feel about it anyway, and I love coming to work. I've definitely found me calling in this line of work, and I wouldn't change it now, I love it.
Like this? Like one person can, with the right motivation in their life, can achieve a gold medal in the Olympics. I choose to surround myself with positive, motivated people. That's got me places.
Actually, what I find is young people are never the difficult people to work with. It's those above, and it's those in positions of power and adults in our communities that they're the difficult people to work with. And like that, they always get tarnished with a bad brush. And it's one thing that everybody tarnishes teenagers in one way, but if you're a teenager then also from the north inner city, or a teenager from a certain area, a certain postcode with a certain accent and dress a certain way, you're going to be painted even worse. So I think like that, it's the little things every day in our job that isn't just inspiring for me anyway. It's kind of, I want to aspire to be more like that.
I don't really know that many people, like in my opinion, around my area that like have been to college or what.
I want to be a midwife. I have a brave mindset, so I'm sure that'll help me.
I want to be an actor and an animator.
I'd watch out for them, just sure, I guess.
I want to be a social worker.
I think if you're working in social services, you have to go through like what it's like for to live with like an abandoned family.
Yeah.
Exactly. I think they should stop thinking like that, because what they're doing now is going to be the result in a few years. Like we're growing up, but we've never went down the way they did. We're growing up, we all want good jobs. But you hear little kids saying, "Oh, I want to be a drug dealer or a little gangster or something." Like it's not a good thing to hear either. It's like that's kind of negative part of it. We're living like the kids these days.
Yeah, our job as well, she had to like put a different address down because she lives in Clapham to make sure she actually like got the job.
There they're just like kind of judging a book by its cover really. They're not really like seeing into like the pages and who this person really is. Instead like they just see like where they're from, and like just because they're like from a certain area like they can't get like their jobs. They're not really like actually looking into the pages and seeing who this person really is, and like if they're actually a good person.
No, it's like little posh people. I'm not trying to be smart.
No,
it's little posh people.
Yeah, like if I was to go to be a politics, like she'd be laughing.
Yeah, literally, we might be like thrown down straight away because of their accent.
I
know someone who's a nurse, and they were like back talk for years saying, "Oh, you'll never actually like make it," and now they're like a nurse.
Yeah, like for young kids not to be like pressured into like doing all that stuff just to be like at school or to like be known as she's this and that. Like
just don't get involved with the young kids in the flats now because it's not worth it. It's not going to be worth it. Ever.
Yeah, it's very core to have a safe space, even if just for 2 hours a week. That you know that you can come in here, rain, hail, snow, sun, and we'll be here. Yeah, whatever it is.
It's like your education comes before, so it doesn't matter how you're feeling. And like you could go into school having a bad day, like, and they say, "Oh, like you're not paying attention," and then you snap, and then they're like giving out to you, but then they don't actually do anything to help with mental health. Like, I feel like it's just very ignored in schools. It's like people thinking you're weak.
yeah.
Like, that's just always kind of sad if you're weak. Like,
I think like those who actually like open up about like what their like mental health is are actually like more braver, because like if like you're able to like open up about what you're feeling to people like you truly trust, like that's actually like one of like the most bravest things to do in like my opinion, because there's not that many people, because they like people who feel like you're weak if you talk about like what you're going through are like actually the weak ones, because they're not like very trustful or like you know able to talk about in front of like people like that they know. So like, but for those that are able to like are actually like, pretty like strong and like able to like you know be comfortable around other people while talking about like situations they're going through. I'd say actually bring people in like who have actually gone through like mental health and actually talked about like what their life basically was like with like what they were going through as well, like and like just talk about like what's been like what happened, like how they had to get through what they were going through, and like just talk about stuff like that, like with students and all, like students asking like them questions, so like that's like how they would know like how to like get through stuff like depression or like anxiety or PTSD.
When I was going around to the different flat complexes and the housing places and things, there's a lot of young people who, during adolescence anyway, you're figuring out your identity and everybody's questioning things and learning, but then there's a whole cohort of young people who are really on a journey of self-discovery in terms of their gender identity and in terms of sexuality, and they are the years that you're going to explore that. But while that has its own complications and complexities, if you then take trying to do that while experiencing the other barriers and lack of opportunities that every other young person in this area is facing, it's really difficult. Different being a young woman from a middle class area, the challenges you face, the lack of opportunities, it's all going to be very different. Your experience as a woman, we always hear experiences of, you know, women of colour, women of different religions and women of different abilities, etc. But you don't really hear about the differences in working class young women, and that's what we have here is a lot of working class young women, and we don't just want them to feel like that's a label that they don't really know what to do with. They need to celebrate that, but they also need to figure it out.
That they have a lot to say. Like they have it there, they just need the space and the platform to say it.
Yeah, they're not always afforded that platform.
So I do feel like it's very important that we get those opportunities to people to get out of that environment. Like I said earlier on about the challenges that we face a lot of the time is the environments that the young people are in all the time.
We don't just do work with young people, the young people also do work with the community. Like that young women's group, one of the young women's group we have, they decided they were going to set up a youth space, like another safe space where they were going to interact with other young people. So there's actually a service called Child Vision, and that's the National Education Centre for young people who are visually impaired or blind. but also some of the young people would have other disabilities playing in, so it could be intellectual, physical, whichever. And through a link in there, they've managed to set up a weekly space where it's a drop-in space where all of those young people, regardless of ability, they just mix together. And when I say it is the most moving and pure thing, because the young people with the disabilities, they wouldn't always get the chance to mix with other young people. And then our young people, there can be a sense of fear there from the unknown. And when they came together and they mixed, when I say it was like magical, it was just, you could see barriers just crashing down straight away. And it was actually, I think, for me, really nice, because quite often our young people are judged from the get-go by how they look, how they sound. But nobody was going to judge them there. And then obviously with the young people who are visually impaired, quite often they're judged. People see the cane, they see the dog, they see the wheelchair, they don't see, but instead you had all these big personalities coming in together. And when I say they're doing painting, pizza making, it's like just singing. Sometimes like they just make a meal and they all just sit together and chat, and it's magical.
This is a message to the world, that if you water the flowers, that they will grow and they will blossom. And planting some seeds, seeds of positivity, can blossom a whole tree, and it will bear fruit. And that's where this quote comes in. One human race, and be first, be different, be unique, and like anybody can follow the crowd, but it takes someone to stand out from the crowd. And if you stand out and actually be positive, bear fruit, and speak positivity into the world, you can. My opinion would be you're out of this world, and that's why the moon and the galaxies are there. I feel it's really important for people to not have that fear of going, say, for a job interview and stuff like that, going into booking a restaurant and not being allowed access because of where you're from or who you are. That needs to stop, and it needs to stop soon, because we're not going to be here forever. And it's like I just can't, like, I can't wrap my head around why it already hasn't been changed. I feel Ireland could be a lighthouse for Europe and maybe the world, as a beacon of hope, of adding socio-economic as a tank ground.
There's plenty of opportunities in Ballymun. This is one of them with Ballymun Youth Action Project. There is a lot of things, guys, that go on in this project that people don't realise. They don't even know it's here, and it's amazing because they do such an amazing work. I was broken, like emotionally, mentally, physically. I was broken. It built me up, and I got a counsellor, and there's psychiatrists, there's doctors, there's loads of places. There's fun things, there's activities, there's dancing, there's, you name it. Like, I mean, the month of recovery, the whole month of recovery was for September, and it was a purple love heart we had out on a big sign, and people did 50k walk, and we did a lot of things, and we were a lot of proud to be in Ballymun, and proud to be from Ballymun. I got my daughter, I got my son back in my life. I have a great life, I have a good life. I mean, I wake up, I may not have no money, but inside I feel $1 million. I have me, myself, and my 2 kids. What more could I ask for? This is the STAR project. This is another famous place that has done amazing things for many people, many people. This has been an inspiration to me. It really has. this is giving me back. Like, I mean, my life, I fell and I hiccuped, but I can always ring that bell. I mean, I can always ring that bell. Like at home, if I'm feeling lonely, sad, tired, I can always ring and just say, hello, can I speak to so-and-so? And yeah, maybe there's somebody there, like.
There's areas around Ballymun that have, there's people down there, neighbours that, they do a lot of work with the garden, don't they? You'll be seeing badges and all that little plaques that say, voted best garden of the year or whatever. There's a good amount of work tended in those flowers, but it really just does come down to like the people in the community rather than the council.
I know the council was I live over in Salog, and they put like gates on all the flats so that like bikes and cars and all can get through. Because for like 2 years people were just robbing cars that were all around the back and robbing them, going around the green and all, and then bringing up bikes through the square and all. And then Ollie went home with Olive. He put the gates in there. But before that, everyone's cars get robbed. There was about 16 cars robbed from just the back row of money gas.
Guys going around.
Yeah. It's probably, I'd say it's been
And the
about...
kids are getting involved and all that.
It's not that with all the kids on the little PlayStations and all that. We never had a PlayStation around. We never had any of that, like, so we can play football, don't we? Going to tree or something, whatever.
I looked outside and we were playing rounds and go across the wall play football. Well, I'm heading out like looking at my cousins now, like they don't even come out well the one came in with my brother. You don't come out, you just play the game now, and there's like, especially with some of that, they just want to sit inside and you have to be taught to go. Like I remember I used to be hate being called in, because he said if you're coming in there, you're not allowed back out.
If you have beef with someone and end up passing it all over social media, trying to make a show of you.
Well, it's like if you're having an argument with someone, they try to make a show of you. Like, young people going to parties and all that, have a stand a little wardrobe, like ketamine and all that. Yeah, it's like fast gas house and like, the counter is the drain.
It's gas full of
nitroglycerin.
Yeah, you put this shit like a barbecue on.
Or drain your brain of oxygen.
Yeah, and you put it in a balloon and you fill it up, and then you inhale the gas through a balloon. Because you can't do it from two because it's freezing out.
What else is there to do here? Like, is there
Fight.
Go out on the stroke,
fight?
Go out on the stroke.
What's the stroke?
Go out,
Rob.
Yeah.
The hospital system is the biggest joke.
Wait 20 hours to tell you, there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, like,
you can really tell us something wrong.
They'll have you in there for hours just to tell you, oh look, you're okay.
Go home and take a bleeding bag.
No. I didn't find out I had dyslexia until 5th year.
I'd say...
End of 5th year.
I'd say...
I went into my leaving cert, but just found out I had dyslexia. I was in honours English and all. I was failing that the last 2 years. No one was giving me any help.
Schools are biased towards some people. Like someone would get away with something and you'd get help for it.
Yeah.
I'd argue you get more education in here than you would in school, just because you get actual...
It's called the teaching life shit.
It's not just...
They're not teaching you like the size of an atom that flies to the fucking sky.
Yeah, you never going to say or do again.
What would we do to know that for?
Yeah, it's kind of like better than school, because you're still getting the same education you get in school, but you don't have to worry about the big exams at the end of the year.
I don't have a lot of fun here.
You have a lot of fun?
Some days, yeah.
Some days.
Yeah.
You do give like you a good fair amount of chances.
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
You're not in care because you have the mad that you can turn to a dad, to turn to your circumstances are different, do you know what I mean? So there's no support there, and for anyone to turn to that's leaving care, and that's how the addiction and then no jobs and all comes into play, because you actually don't know what to do, what path to take in life, because you're not being guided in the right way. So, and even down to little things like trying to get a new doctor or trying to get a credit union, they always look for a fixed address, and this comes into play with the homeless as well. Most homeless people obviously haven't got a fixed address that they can turn to, so they can't, for example, open a bank account without a letter of proof of address. They can't get a new doctor, they can't do anything, open a credit union. So how does anyone expect people to better themselves when they're constantly being discriminated against by everyone? Do you know what I mean? For things are completely out of our hands. With addiction is very close to my heart, like, because I've seen it struggling. I've seen a lot of people struggling that will be close to me. Do you know what I mean? But no addict decides to wake up one morning and say, right, I'm going out today and I'm going to be strung out on drugs. Nobody wants that, do you know what I mean? Everyone is suffering with their own demons in their own head, and I think that sometimes in life your worst enemy can be our own brain. But there's no support. Like, if, for example, if you're walking down the street and you see some homeless person maybe asking for spirit change, some people just look down their nose and say, oh no, that's not right, it's for drugs. That's not right at all. There's a man actually at the minute on O'Connell Bridge, and his stories after only coming out recently, he's there ages. But basically what happened was his daughter died, his wife became an alcoholic to deal with this, and then she wasn't paying off the mortgage bills. She died of the alcoholism, and now he's left on the street. Do you know what I mean? Because he has no house. But he's been discriminated against constantly by people walking across that bridge, looking at him, asking for money, but nobody knows what's after happening in his life. Nobody knows his story, do you know what I mean? He wasn't after getting himself on drugs. He just had a different circumstances altogether, but people presume because he's on the street that he's on drugs. And even if he is on drugs, where's the help for him? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's disgraceful, to be honest, in my eyes, that our own people are constantly looking down on our own people, because we're all equal, do you know what I mean? Like, nobody's better than anyone. And for example, when you're growing up and you're in aftercare, you're 13, 14, 15, they're the years your mother, your father, whoever's at home, your grandparents will be teaching you how to cook, how to wash your clothes, how to dress yourself, how to save money, and how to basically live your life for the rest of your life. But when you're in care and you're being constantly moved around, there's nobody keeping track of that. So you're not learning your life skills, you're not learning how to value money or save money, and then you're at 18 years of age, you're just out. So the way I think you could help that situation would be, when someone comes into care, they're obviously struggling with trust from the get-go, because they're after being tore away from their family, what they're comfortable with, they don't want to be in care. So I think if they had one stable person, for example the social worker, and that social worker follows them throughout their care system and doesn't keep swapping and changing, because if it's out of their hands whether their houses have to change, that's not what they can deal with. But the social worker could say the same, so that maybe that child could feel that they have one person to turn to, and that person is actually there to listen to them, and then that social worker could follow that child's growth throughout their life, to realise, to make sure that they know how to do their washing, know how to save, know how to cook for when they do turn 18, even if the housing crisis is still the same, because we've no control over that at the minute, that they still know how to help better themselves and help themselves, the resources they can go to, the places they can go to get the help and the supports that are offered to them. In my experience, if that little thing had been changed when I was younger and that one consistent person was there, I do reckon that would have helped me a lot. I always just believe what you put into a child when they're younger is what you're going to get out of the child when they're older. So you need that person. We're no different in that. Like, I don't see why I should be discriminated against for the fact that my dad weren't in the position to have me, do you know what I mean? But all my life growing up, I was discriminated against for that fact, even without people realising they were doing it, do you know what I mean? And that needs to stop, because, like, I'm trying to better myself, but even throughout life when you're trying to go forward in life, it always comes back to that, do you know what I mean? So it's very important just to bring awareness to it and try to help it stop, for not me but for other people growing up in care that's going to be going through the care system, to help them, make it a little bit easier for them. Because you have to realise, like, when I'm not being funny, I'm grateful I'm here, but I did not ask to be born, nobody asked to be born, do you know what I mean? And when you are born into an unstable family, that's not the child's fault, that's not anyone's fault, do you know what I mean? So I think there should be a member of authority to come in, obviously not like the social services, nothing like that, but just to make sure that your actually personal human needs are being met. You learn the most when you're a baby and when you're in the teenage years, your adolescent years, and your brain is like a sponge. But when you're in care and you're not being taught, how does anyone expect people to live throughout life and not to be in the revolving door of prison, or not to be homeless, or not to be on drugs, to take the easy route out? Because we don't know the right way unless someone teaches it to you. I had to learn my independence myself because nobody else taught me, and I was lucky enough to have a head on my shoulders. I actually could do that, but I've witnessed 30, 40, 50 people in the last 2 years in aftercare that's genuinely relapsed in every way, and there's 2 people in my time in 2 years in aftercare that haven't relapsed and that are still sober.
Welcome to Ballyfermot. As you can see, there's a lot of beauty. A beautiful canal, nature, walks. There's also sometimes rubbish. There's also things that aren't maybe cared for in the same way as in areas with different socio-economic backgrounds. And I've lived here for a year, and in my opinion, that is not due to the people that live in this community, but it's due to a lack of care from the government in many ways. A lack of resources, a lack of opportunity, and a lack of care by the council to make this place as beautiful as it deserves to be. It's the one place you'll find just horses, almost like cowboy country sometimes, and that's just authentic to me, that's rugged, and that's a little bit about why I like living in Ballyfermot. This is a community that I've called my home for the past year. I grew up in an area that is, I guess, considered richer in terms of wealth, in terms of resources, but I think that the community here is very rich in other ways. What I've seen is a lot of community spirit, a lot of people that care about each other and that have had to fight for their rights, for their existence. Strong people with strong hearts and strong minds, friendly people, kind people, warm people. I feel safe here, but we have to ask ourselves, why are people feeling like they have to act out in certain ways in these communities?
I work in family base in Ballyfermot, which is a community centre, and it also has a creche in it as well. So growing up in Ballyfermot for me was very positive as well. Growing up I had a lot of support and I had lots of activities and stuff to do and keep me busy, but I know a lot of people don't, and I think that's when kind of problems emerge. I never really thought about what being from the area was like until I maybe got a little bit older and started to go to different places, you know, like go to different areas and you just see like different houses, different communities, different like nearly ecosystems and people and stuff like that. So then you obviously start to reflect about your own area. There is lots of services and things that are within the area, but I feel like sometimes the problem for some people who, and these people tend to, you'd think need it most as well, but they're not engaged with services. You know, they don't believe in the state, they don't believe in, you know, that if they go to the service that they won't be let down by them again, because it's nearly like repetition, and over time they're just kind of becoming disengaged with like welfare in terms of how they're being treated and how they're kind of sent to try and then get work, or even things with like addiction with people and within those communities. So people become very disengaged with like the systems and the state, and it is kind of nearly like us versus them kind of thing, and then that's when people won't even go to the service. So it's the battle is even getting people to go to the door, I suppose, but because for a long time they've had bad reputations, whether it's, and all that stems from things like that's happened with like the church and mother and baby homes, and kind of that generational trauma that stemmed down from their parents into them. But there is a lot of great services as well that are in those areas that do really good work, and the ones that are doing are fighting against a huge struggle in terms of funding and stuff, because there's so many people that need the service. But again, it's like you can't give people the access to the service if you're running a program in a community centre and there's only 20 spaces that you can do for that time, and there's probably 200 kids that could do that. Like, so that's a huge thing that you don't see in other areas, because a lot of the times people from a wealthier background or more affluent area can, you know, go to play a tennis lesson or go and join this team or go swimming, or, you know, do all these outside activities that do cost a lot of money. Like, even for me being a kid playing football growing up, like, your parents had to pay your registration fee every year, your parents had to bring you to training on time all the time, you had to play the match. So like, if you didn't have that support growing up, and your parents, say, for some people, like, their parents were like drinking a lot or even doing drugs maybe, or just maybe like depressed or something like that, they weren't getting that support or to be brought to like those activities and to have that support around them. So that's what another reason why kids can slip through the cracks. But when those services aren't accessible to people, then that's when things like antisocial behaviour steps in, and kind of like people can go down bad roads then as well. If you're put into a scenario where you don't have a lot of options, you don't have a lot of moves, you can't kind of generate a life for yourself, you can't kind of establish yourself as a person, or, you know, it's not to say that people can't or go to college or better themselves, but like when you don't know anyone that's done that before, or you don't even know where to begin, or you don't even know where to start, sometimes it can feel like a huge battle for people, and for people who've not had a lot, say, growing up. I think they can kind of struggle to, say, establish themselves and have steady jobs and steady routines and stuff like that.
It's important not to forget all the positive action going on in places like Ballyfermot, and Family Base is an example of that. It's a community centre that offers children and adults a space to feel safe and to learn, to grow, to be creative. And it acknowledges the talent of the young people in areas like Ballyfermot that often aren't given the same opportunities due to socio-economic discrimination. But it's spaces like this that allow people to really be their true selves and to shine as bright as they deserve to shine.
The whole point of media is a headline, it's to grab someone's attention, make them buy a newspaper or click a link or, you know, read a story. I understand that when there is crime and things are reported that it is going to be spoken about and in the news, but I just feel like there's like undertone within like the tabloid news and media, like certain phone shows and call-in chat shows that like kind of look to play people against each other and try to make these areas out to be really bad and be the boogeyman, because you see in American politics as well, they need to have an enemy, do you know what I mean? They need to have somebody that they're fighting against. So I think in a sense the media is setting up to do that, and it plays out a certain type of narrative or a story with tons of things, and I think one of those things is, say, working class areas, and when bad news stories kind of come from there, they like to highlight them in a very graphic kind of way to maybe shock or scare people, and I feel like that accomplishes their aim of selling the story and selling the paper, but what it also does then is gives off a terrible perception of that area and doesn't allow people to believe that that area could have goodness in it and be mostly good. There's been time and time again where it's been shown that you have people that have come from these areas that have like completely defied odds and stuff like that. You know, there's so many other families that work like tooth and nail to provide that goodness and to give their kids things that they never had, and like a lot of times even where it might not be like emotional or anything like that, but just gestures of like Christmas time is so hard for people in working class areas, and just trying to get them whatever they can and whatever they're seeing, you know, like what their friends want and stuff like that. So there is so much like love and heart that goes into these areas, and that people are showing up every day and doing and kind of fighting against the odds in a lot of ways.
There's been a lot of trouble in areas in Ballyfermot like Cherry Orchard, which we can see here recently. Problems with drugs and clashes with young people and police. But it's important to note from anyone that I know from these areas that they do not condone what's happening, and they're actually fearful for their own lives due to a minority of young people that are acting out due to circumstances put on them by systematic issues. Most of the people here are families who want to live their lives without trouble and without being painted by the brush of the media. They have enough problems to worry about without being branded and talked about on radio shows and in the papers, being tarnished with the reputation that is not them.
I think people just do need support in a way that they're able to have autonomy over themselves, autonomy over their mind, autonomy over their feelings, and be in control of their lives and the direction in which they're going in, and not be in a reactionary state sometimes. And I think holistic practices give light to that, and they allow you to tap into that. And I think those kind of practices to be brought into even as young as schools and stuff like that, so kids can start to understand why they feel a type of way. Why am I angry? Why am I sad? Why am I mad? You know, why am I jealous? They'd still have the same pressures, but they'd be able to deal with it, and they'd have the tools to deal with it instead of not. If I was to speak to young people, all I would say is to just find something that you like and find something that you enjoy, that when you do it brings you joy, and not a fake joy, not a fake happy, but actually fulfilling, something that you go away after it. When it's done ages later, you'll think back, oh, that was brilliant. And find whether it's painting, cycling, swimming, reading, making music, doing that, cooking, anything it is, just put your energy into that and let it multiply opportunities for you, and to not let yourself be boxed in by other people's expectations.
always known as the guy from Darndale, you know what I mean? He's the young fella from Darndale, so I would have found that tough being outside, and from having like kids trying to bully me and make mockery of me. I felt like that even from teachers, like I've been like sort of been ostracised out of class, so I've been removed from the general population, because at the time like I didn't know how to actually manage, I didn't know how to cope like with the pressure of being like, actually you're from Darndale, you're this, and getting the slaggings and the things like that. When I did inherit the reputation of the area, like that sort of like stuck with me, you know. So obviously from being in the area, like we found a lot of like friends and things like that growing up, and we all showed similar interests at like one parent families, you know, and we all sort of like found like a brotherhood, like, you know what I mean, where we all like stuck together. There was no resources in the area. There's nothing for us that we could actually do. But one thing that we did always have was the reputation of being from that district hanging over our heads, and then you'd have the police coming in and encountering my life at an early stage, like arresting you on loitering charges and arresting you on stupid things. When me and my brother and my mother moved there was a stigma that was attached with the area that was going back since the 80s and the 70s when it was actually built. And as a child, I actually inherited that stigma straight off the bat. Now we're going over to a community where I grew up, which isn't far from where we're at the leaving. And we're going to talk about a few different points on what discrimination, socio-economic discrimination about the area I grew up in, how that affected me as a child. Basically, what I found was, when growing up there, I was like, am I a product of this environment, you know, because I'm a chap who had, I'm a young lad who had mental health difficulty growing up, ADHD, and growing up here as a child, it was very tough, you know. The community was very, very tough. You're sort of drawn into all this sort of violence and stuff like that, you know, because other people in the communities we were just all like fucking broken, and you know, we were just a little bit wild or whatever, so we had to learn how to fight to protect yourself. And the devil makes work for idle hands, you know what I mean, and the council made sure that there was nothing there to keep us occupied. There was no services there. You're looking up to all that gangs and things like that, because it's a tough area. You need protection, like, you know what I mean. You need to, and then before you know it, you're in the midst of it all. Everywhere I go, I was always sort of tarnished with the same brush. When I withdrew myself from the area, the community, everything, and I had all of them people up on the Tiglin rehabilitation program who really helped me, really took a liking to me. Like, I really progressed and I really developed, you know, to the person who I am today. And that rose a question within me, you know. That answered the question. From being in the community, I've been labelled like, you're just another one from Darndale, like especially with the police and all, like, you know what I mean. And I found it very tough, because we were like ostracised and living in a bubble. Living in a bubble that like even the media and all would always like write articles about Darndale's this, or this happened in Darndale, or this shooting, that shooting, and you know what I mean. And then we're all tarnished then with the same brush. And even with that Dublin 17 address, like, I got like refused from school applications and things like that. Do you know what I mean? So I felt greatly discriminated against. We were just labelled as bad people, bad kids. I've been told in school I'd never amount to nothing. I was put away at the age of 12, you know what I mean? At the age of 12, I was put away, sent away by the courts, the children's courts and things like that, you know. But all they see, they don't see the background, they don't see the traumas, the hardships, everything that we had to sort of endure. If you're from Darndale, you apply for a job, you put your name down the CV, Darndale, that CV is getting ripped up and put in the bin because of discrimination from the postcode from the area. The address can follow you for the rest of your life. From living in them areas, you can pick up your convictions and things like that you get. They follow you for the rest of your life. They're a blockade for when you want to get a job. So it's bad enough having convictions, having an address, having an accident. You're going to place children into an environment like this, and then they have to grow up in an environment like this. Yeah, all they see is you're just a trouble-rising young man, and just put him out somewhere, Overstown, St. Lawrence's, Michael's, wherever. You know what I mean? That's the harsh reality of it. Them little lanes in there would have been from, like, my little community was in there, and yeah. It taught me whole entire life that from social workers, from people that were like screws and staff members, from the institutions that I was put away in. I was told by GPs, I was told by the courts, I was told by like the police, I was told by everybody I was never going to amount on. I was always saying to myself, is it me? Am I just a bad person? Is it me? Maybe I am a product of my environment. Do you know what I mean? Maybe is it me, I'm a bad person, but I knew in my own heart that I'm not a bad person. All them labels that they label me is, they're not true. Do you know what I mean? Because I was lucky enough to have the experience to get withdrawn from the area, to go up to a place and deal with everything that was going on inside me, that was driving all of this madness inside me. I was walking on the polytunnels one day. This was my assigned work duty in the centre. While I was walking, I had some time to think about my life. I had some strawberries grown in the polytunnel, and I had some grown in my room as well. Inside the polytunnel, the strawberries were grown really great, real ripe and real fresh. I was just standing there one day and I was thinking to myself, how did they get like that? I started to realise it's because of the resources, like how the resources, the good environment, it's the heat, it's the water, and it has all the good stuff combined to help them grow, compared to the plants left outside the polytunnel, unattended, uncared for. And as I was thinking, I could relate that to myself. The community I grew up in was very rough, and there was a huge lack of resource and a high crime rate. Nobody really cared about it. The majority of the population are all on social welfare. There's no football team, not many resources. The police are always around, and generally nobody really liked it. My community had a bad reputation. I grew up there and found it very hard. I realised it's not the person that comes out of the community, it's the actual resources they have and the refinements that's around them that help them grow. When I returned to my community, I noticed very little had changed, and it reminded me of the strawberry beds left unattended. Just like when I was walking on them strawberry beds, it was the good resources that helped the plants grow, and for myself, it was the good resources and the good people that helped me grow. I soon found out that I wasn't a bad person. It was the place that I had to grow up in that had been neglected. It's ironic because it was at the strawberry beds where I developed an understanding of myself, the key to understanding others. As I matured and my character continued to develop, I realised that I can now use my experience to help others. This experience has taught me what a young person needs to grow. People from disadvantaged communities are seen as bad people, but that's not true. I question it. Is it just a coincidence these communities end up in the States that they are in, or is it purposely designed by government bodies and councils to be this way? With them childhood traumas, once I got to learn about just the basics in life through biblical context and things like that, that's when I felt like I was set free. And then I realised it's not the person, it's not the people that are bad people, do you know what I mean? It's the communities they're forced to live in. They're underfunded. So you can just look around and you can see, look, it's just that they're underfunded. Nobody really cares about it because the media slander the communities with, oh, darn, this happened here, blah, blah, blah. So they don't help the situation. When I was introduced to ATD 8 years ago, I found I love the ethos within ATD. Everybody's equal, do you know what I mean? Doesn't matter who you are or where you come from, we're all equal. And I really loved that, and I really took a shine into it. And from a person who's been grown up being told that I'll never amount to anything, I'm going to be destined for a life of crime and everything else, and I'll never make it. It was very tough to grow up here, but look, at the end of the day, it's that they're making me strong. It's that I'm conditioned, you know, through hardships and conditioned. And what else I had sat down, it's at the setting like a burning flame in my gut for a desire to speak up and to make change. You know what I mean? And that's why people in this community need to be protected. I just like to hold this up because what you have in Ireland at the moment protected under the law is you have a gender, age, religion, disability, civil status, family status, traveller community, race, sexual orientation. So there's 9 grounds. So socio-economic status is about people's social status. So it's not just as important as the other 9 grounds. So where's our protection? Why is this being prolonged? Do you know what I mean? Because there's a vast majority of us in Ireland who suffer from socio-economic discrimination on a daily basis. It's hidden. Not a lot of people, because the stigma of poverty, nobody wants to talk out, nobody wants to talk about poverty because it's a touchy subject. You know, but I feel it's very, very important that I'm here today, that I want to talk about it, I want to get on film, because I want to come back and I want to be productive within the community that I grow up in, and I want to see that this socio-economical status is going to be passed, and it has to be passed, because we need the protection under the law that's the same as everybody else on them other 9 grounds. But if you want to come into all of these communities, clear them up and all, rehabilitation, all of this, mental health, everything, all blah blah blah, well and good, well then the crime rate is going to drop down, you know. We won't stop campaigning until we actually do get this law passed. You know, when this law is passed, it's going to be groundbreaking, basically. You know, it's 3 years in the making, you know, and we will get it passed. Yeah, we'll get it passed one way or another.